Have you ever wondered how an army managed to dominate half the world with shields and swords? What made Roman equipment so efficient and so feared that it transformed simple soldiers into war machines that crossed continents and toppled entire civilizations? What you're about to discover may surprise you, because behind every sharp gladius, every imposing shield, and every gleaming suit of armor lay a precise logic, a strategic mindset, and a clear intention to win not just through force, but through intimidation. Stay with me until the end, because understanding how Roman soldiers were equipped is to delve into a world where every detail had purpose. The Gladius, for example, wasn't just a short sword. It was an extension of the warrior's body, designed for quick and lethal combat. And the shield, the famous scutum, wasn't just for individual protection. It was part of a collective mechanism, a mobile wall that advanced with discipline and crushed any resistance. Have you ever experienced this? The feeling of being faced with something that not only threatens you physically, but also destabilizes you emotionally? That's exactly what Rome's enemies felt when facing a legion in formation. But it wasn't just the weaponry that made the difference. Roman armor, especially the lorica segmentata, combined mobility with durability, allowing soldiers to move nimbly without losing protection. And more than that, it created an image. A Roman soldier on the march, his armor gleaming in the sun, his crested helmet and his shield in hand, was a sight that made an impact even before the first blow. It was psychological warfare. It was presence. It was dominance. And all of this was standardized. Rome left no room for improvisation. Every piece of equipment was designed to facilitate training, replenishment, and cohesion among troops. This meant that a soldier newly integrated into the legion already knew exactly how to position himself, how to move, how to react. It was as if everyone spoke the same body language, creating a synchronicity that few armies of the time could replicate. And this standardization was not just practical, it was symbolic. It reinforced the idea that the soldier did not fight alone, but as part of a greater force, of an empire that moved as one. Visual impact also cannot be ignored. The Romans knew that appearance mattered. Helmets, for example, varied according to rank and function, and visual details helped reinforce hierarchies and inspire respect. A centurion with his transverse crest was instantly recognizable, and his presence on the battlefield influenced the behavior of the surrounding soldiers. It was a form of silent leadership, built on image and posture. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because understanding how each piece of Roman equipment connected to war strategy and the collective mindset can reveal a lot about the true power behind the legions, and why, even centuries later, we still speak of them as the warriors who redefined the art of war. And when we begin to understand that each piece of Roman equipment carried not only a practical function, but also a symbolic intention, everything changes. The gladius wasn't just a sword, it was a warning. The shield wasn't just protection, it was presence. And the armor, with its articulated plates and imposing appearance, served not only to resist physical impact, but also to inflict psychological impact. It was as if the Roman soldier was designed to be seen before being faced. And that, in itself, was an advantage. If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below with what resonated most with you so far. It could be a curiosity, a feeling, or even a reflection on how appearance and strategy go hand in hand in the history of war. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people with this kind of content that provokes, connects, and transforms. And if you enjoyed this approach, leave a like. It shows that this type of narrative is valuable to you and helps keep this exchange we're building together alive. By the way, if you want to continue exploring the behind-the-scenes story of Roman warriors, the symbols that shaped the empire, and the details that official history doesn't always highlight, subscribe to the channel here. That way, you can stay up to date on future videos and join me on this journey through stories that still resonate, even after 2,000 years. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because understanding how the Roman shield became an extension of collective strategy can reveal a lot about the mindset that underpinned each formation, each advance, and each victory. Roman military design was not born by chance. It was shaped by a mindset that saw war not just as a physical confrontation, but as a contest of presence, perception, and psychological dominance. Every piece of Roman equipment, from gladius to shield, armor, and helmet, was designed to fulfill more than one function. It wasn't enough to kill. It was necessary to intimidate, destabilize, and control the pace of battle even before the first blow was struck. And this reveals a hidden truth about the Roman Empire. Its strength lay not only in the number of soldiers, but in the quality of the strategy that involved them. The gladius, for example, was short, direct, and unadorned, but its effectiveness stemmed precisely from this simplicity. Amid the legion's tight formation, it allowed for quick, precise, and lethal strikes, and more than that, it reinforced the collective logic. A Roman soldier didn't need a longsword to duel individually. He needed a blade that functioned within a system, in sync with the shields at his side, with coordinated advances with constant pressure on the enemy. It was a weapon that fit into the system, and that says a lot about the mentality behind the Roman army. The shield, in turn, was an extension of the body and strategy. The scutum wasn't just a physical barrier. It was part of a military choreography. When dozens of shields lined up, they formed a living wall, advancing with rhythm and intention. And this wall didn't just protect, it suffocated. It pushed the enemy toward error, exhaustion, and despair. It was a tool of emotional control. And when the Romans formed the famous testudo with shields covering the front, sides, and top, the visual impact was so strong that many adversaries hesitated before attacking, because they weren't facing men, they were facing a structure. The armor followed the same logic. The lorica segmentata, with its articulated plates, allowed mobility without sacrificing protection, but it also created an image. The shine of the metal, the sound of the plates moving, the uniformity of the look, all of this contributed to a presence that went beyond function. It was as if the Roman soldier was designed to be seen, to be feared, to be remembered. And this visual construction wasn't vanity, it was strategy. It was part of the psychological warfare that Rome mastered. Even helmets played this role. With crests indicating rank and shapes reinforcing identity, they helped organize the battlefield and communicate leadership. A centurion was recognizable from a distance, and his presence influenced the behavior of the surrounding soldiers. It was a form of silent command that worked even amidst chaos. And this shows how Rome thought of everything, even the eye. Details that many armies overlooked. This attention to design reveals a journey of conscious decisions. Rome didn't just build an army, it built a visual language, a narrative of strength, an aesthetic of dominance. And this aesthetic wasn't superficial, it was functional. It was part of the strategy. Because when the enemy already feels defeated before the fight begins, half the war is already won. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because understanding how the Roman gladius became a symbol of efficiency and how its shape influenced soldiers' behavior can reveal a lot about the impact design has on combat mentality and the construction of power. Comment here. That makes sense to me. If this part made you see that Roman equipment wasn't just a tool, it was part of a strategy that began long before the battle. The Roman gladius is one of those examples where simplicity transforms into genius. At first glance, it doesn't impress. A short, straight-bladed sword, unadorned, without dramatic curves. But it is precisely this absence of excess that reveals its true strength. The gladius was designed for what truly mattered, winning battles. And not just any battle, but those fought in close quarters, where every second counts and every move could be your last. It wasn't made for elegant duels, but for brutal combat. Amidst dust, blood, and the scream of clashing shields, the gladius's impact lies not only in its blade, but in how it fit into the Roman mentality. Soldiers didn't fight as lone warriors. They were part of a formation, a structure that advanced as a block. And within this logic, a long sword would be an obstacle. The gladius, because it was short, allowed for quick, precise, direct strikes. It was as if the Roman soldier had an extension of his own arm, ready to pierce, cut, and retreat in fractions of a second. This brutal efficiency wasn't a coincidence. It was a decision, a conscious choice that reflected the transformation of warfare into technique, method, and control. Behind the scenes of military campaigns, the gladius also carried symbolic weight. It represented discipline, objectivity, and the absence of vanity. While other peoples valued ornate weapons, with curved blades and decorated hilts, Rome focused on functionality, and this spoke volumes about its mentality. The Roman soldier didn't need to appear dangerous, he needed to be dangerous, and the gladius, silent and lethal, fulfilled this role perfectly. It was a weapon that drew attention not for its appearance, but for its results. And these results were measured in territories conquered, enemies defeated, and legions that returned with fewer men but greater glory. There's a hidden truth in this kind of choice. When an empire decides to standardize its primary weapon, it's saying something about its worldview. It's affirming that strength lies in repetition, in constancy, in the ability to train thousands of men to act as one. And the gladius was, the ideal tool for this. Easy to produce, easy to teach, easy to replace, but difficult to counter. Because when dozens of soldiers advance with the same weapon, at the same pace, with the same intention, the impact isn't just physical, it's psychological. The enemy doesn't see individuals, they see a machine. A gear that doesn't hesitate, that doesn't improvise, that doesn't break. This choice of the gladius also influenced the soldier's behavior. He knew he didn't need flourishes. He knew his strength lay in precision, repetition, and trust in the collective. And this shaped his posture, his way of fighting, his way of thinking. It was a weapon that taught mentality, that reinforced values, that transformed ordinary men into pieces of a larger strategy. And this transformation is what makes the gladius so fascinating, because it wasn't just a blade, it was a symbol, a reflection of how Rome viewed power, war, and the empire itself. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because understanding how the Roman shield connected to the gladius and the collective formation can reveal a lot about the emotional impact this combination had on enemies, and how it underpinned the legion's visual and strategic authority. Comment here. I'm on this journey too. If this part made you see that the Roman gladius wasn't just a weapon, it was an extension of the mindset that built an empire. The Roman shield, the scudum, was not just a defensive piece. It was an extension of the collective mentality that sustained the empire. When a soldier wielded it, he wasn't just protecting himself. He was taking his place within a larger structure, where every movement was calculated, every formation a strategic decision, and every advance carried a clear intention: to dominate. The scudum was large, curved, heavy, but incredibly functional. Its shape allowed the soldier to hide behind it, but also to push back the enemy, create space, and maintain the legion's rhythm. And this rhythm was what made Rome seem invincible. The testudo formation is the most emblematic example of this logic. When the soldiers grouped together, shields in front and above, they created a kind of armored cocoon, a war tortoise advancing slowly but surely. It was a powerful image. There were no gaps, no improvisation, no hesitation. It was as if the legion had transformed into a single entity, with an armored body and a collective mind. And this image not only protected, it intimidated. Because the enemy didn't see isolated soldiers, but a living wall, moving with precision and not retreating. It was a demonstration of visual authority, of emotional dominance, of absolute control of the battlefield. Behind the scenes of this formation, decisions were made that reveal much about the transformation of war into art. The shield wasn't just a physical barrier, it was a tool of pressure. Soldiers used the scudum to push, to unbalance, to clear a path. And when this was done in sync, the impact was devastating. It wasn't a one-on-one fight. It was a mechanism that crushed any resistance. And this mechanism only worked because every piece, every shield, every arm, every step was aligned with the legion's mindset. Advance with discipline, win with constancy, dominate with presence. This presence was reinforced by its visual aspect. The Roman shield was not decorated frivolously. It bore symbols, colors, and markings that identified the legion, created cohesion, and reinforced the idea of belonging. And this had a profound impact on the soldiers' morale. They knew they were fighting not just for themselves, but for something greater, for a structure, for a history, for an empire. And this awareness shaped their behavior. The shield was not just an object. It was a constant reminder that every action had consequences, that every formation was a choice, that every advance was part of a collective journey. There's a hidden truth in this kind of equipment. It doesn't just protect, it teaches. It teaches posture, patience, and confidence. The Roman soldier learned to trust the shield of his companion beside him, to maintain his rhythm even under pressure, to endure without losing his form. And this created a mindset that went beyond the battlefield. It was a way of thinking, acting, and existing. The shield shaped the body, but it also shaped the spirit. And this connection between form and function is what made the scutum so essential to the legion's success. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because understanding how Roman armor fit into this system of protection and presence can reveal a lot about the behind-the-scenes nature of war, the decisions that shaped each soldier, and the visual impact that sustained respect for the empire. Comment here, I'm on this journey too. If this part made you see that the Roman shield wasn't just a defense, it was a silent declaration of strength, strategy, and belonging. Roman armor, especially the lorica segmentata, is one of those elements that, when observed closely, reveals much more than physical protection. Its design carries a hidden truth about how Rome viewed the soldier's body, not just as an instrument of combat, but as a symbol of authority, resistance, and presence. The lorica segmentata was no ordinary armor. It represented a transformation in the way warfare was thought of, a fusion of functionality and visual impact, mobility and intimidation. Made of articulated metal, plates held together by leather straps, the lorica segmentata allowed the soldier to move nimbly, even amid the chaos of battle. Unlike the rigid armor of other peoples, which limited movement and required brute strength to wear, Roman armor was light enough to allow for rapid advances, strategic retreats, and coordinated maneuvers. And that made all the difference, because the Roman soldier didn't fight alone. He was part of a formation, a machine that required synchrony, and this synchrony was only possible when the body was free to respond with precision. But the impact of the lorica segmentata wasn't limited to technique. It was also a tool of intimidation. The gleam of metal in the sun, the sound of plates clashing as soldiers marched, the visual uniformity of the legions, all of this created an image that preceded combat. It was as if Rome were saying, "Before you fight, you will see us, you will hear us, you will feel us." And this anticipation created tension. It generated fear. It generated doubt, because the enemy wasn't just facing armed men. It was facing a force that seemed greater than the sum of its soldiers, a force that moved with purpose, that presented itself with imposing presence, that bore in every detail the mark of an empire. Behind the scenes of war, armor also played a psychological role within the legion itself. Wearing the lorica segmentata was a commitment. It was assuming the responsibility of representing Rome, of carrying its history, of protecting its expansion. And this shaped the soldier's posture. He didn't just feel protected, he felt part of something greater. The armor reinforced the collective mentality, discipline, and confidence. It was as if, by donning those plates, the soldier ceased to be just an individual and became an extension of the imperial will. This transformation is what makes the lorica segmentata so fascinating, because it didn't just protect the body, it shaped behavior. It taught the soldier to move with precision, to resist with firmness, to advance with presence. And this presence was noticed by everyone around, by comrades who felt safer beside someone well-equipped, by enemies who hesitated before the imposing image, and even by leaders who saw the armor as a way to identify who was ready to carry out orders with excellence. There's an important revelation at this point. Rome didn't invest in armor out of necessity. It invested strategically, because it knew that the appearance of a well-equipped army influenced the outcome of a battle even before the first blow was struck. It knew that appearance shaped perception, and that perception shaped behavior. The lorica segmentata was, therefore, a complete tool of war, physical, emotional, symbolic, and even with all this complexity, it was practical, easy to assemble, easy to repair, easy to adapt. This allowed Rome to keep its legions operating efficiently, even during long and grueling campaigns. And this logistical efficiency was also part of the strategy. Because an empire that can keep its soldiers well protected, well trained, and well positioned has a better chance of winning, not just through force, but through consistency. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because understanding how Roman helmets complemented this aesthetic of power and reinforced hierarchy within the legions can reveal a lot about the behind-the-scenes nature of leadership, silent communication, and the symbolic construction of authority on the battlefield. Comment here. That makes sense to me if this part made you see that Roman armor wasn't just protection, it was a visual statement of discipline, strategy, and belonging. The Roman helmet, at first glance, may seem like just another protective item, but when we look closely, we realize it carried much more than just metal on the head. It was a symbol, a visual code that communicated function, rank, authority, and even morality. And this was no accident. Rome understood that, amid the chaos of battle, visual clarity could be as decisive as a sharp sword. The helmet didn't just protect the soldier's skull, it helped organize the battlefield, reinforce hierarchies, and maintain the cohesion of the legion. Models varied according to function. A common legionary wore simpler helmets with cheek and neck protection, reinforcing the idea of strength and practicality. Centurions, leaders of groups of 100 men, had helmets with transverse crests, usually made of dyed horsehair, which allowed for immediate identification. This was essential because amid the dust, the noise, and the tension, knowing where the command was could determine the direction of the formation. And this visual clarity was part of the strategy. Rome left no room for doubt. Every soldier knew who to follow, who to protect, who to obey, and the helmet was the point of reference. But beyond its practical function, there was a symbolic layer. The Roman helmet represented belonging. By donning it, the soldier didn't just prepare for combat. He assumed a role. He became part of a structure, a narrative, a mission. And this directly influenced his posture, the way he moved, how he positioned himself, how he reacted. Because the helmet wasn't just a shield against blows, it was a constant reminder that he carried Rome on his shoulders. And this awareness shaped decisions, behaviors, and attitudes. Behind the scenes of war, helmets also helped maintain morale. Well-equipped army, with visually organized soldiers, conveyed confidence, and this confidence spread. Allies felt safer, enemies hesitated, and the soldiers themselves reinforced their discipline. It was as if appearance was an extension of mentality, and this shows how Rome understood the power of image, not as vanity, but as a tool of impact. Because when appearance communicates strength, order, and purpose, it already begins to win even before the first blow. There's a hidden truth in this kind of choice. The Roman helmet wasn't just a piece of metal, it was a language, a way of saying who you are, where you are, what you represent. And this language was understood by everyone on the battlefield. It was silent, yet powerful. And this reveals a lot about Rome's strategic sophistication. Because while other armies relied on brute force, Rome relied on clarity, organization, and visual communication. And that made all the difference. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because understanding how visual symbols, like banners, colors, and insignia, reinforce the legion's identity and created a sense of belonging can reveal a lot about the emotional underbelly of war and the impact that collective image had on soldiers' morale and loyalty. Comment here. That makes sense to me if this part made you see that the Roman helmet wasn't just protection. It was a key piece in building authority and identity within the empire. The standardization of Roman equipment was not just a practical choice. It was a strategic decision that profoundly shaped the mindset of the legions and the functioning of the empire. When Rome decided that its soldiers would use the same type of Gladius, the same shield design, the same armor and helmet, it was doing much more than facilitating training. It was building a visual identity, a common language, a framework that allowed thousands of men to act as one. And this, on the battlefield, was an advantage few enemies could match. Imagine the impact of seeing a Roman legion approaching. There was no improvisation, no variation. Each soldier seemed a replica of the other, with the same movements, the same equipment, the same posture. It was as if Rome had transformed its warriors into a war machine, precise, disciplined, relentless. And this image wasn't just aesthetic. It directly influenced the soldiers' behavior and the enemy's perception. Because when everything works in sync, chaos loses its power. Doubt disappears. Confidence multiplies. Behind the scenes of this standardization, there are revelations that show how far Rome was ahead of its time. By standardizing equipment, the empire was able to train new recruits faster, replace damaged parts more easily, and maintain cohesion among troops from different regions. A soldier from Gaul could join a legion in Syria, and within days, be integrated into the collective rhythm. This was possible because the equipment was the same, the training was the same, the logic was shared, and this uniformity created a sense of belonging that went beyond military function. It was a construction of identity. The hidden truth behind this choice is that it also facilitated logistics. In long campaigns, where attrition was constant and resources needed to be managed precisely, having a standardized system allowed Rome to keep its legions operating efficiently. Blacksmiths knew exactly what to produce. Stocks were clearly organized. Replenishments happened without delay, and this meant the army not only fought well, but lasted longer, resisted more, advanced further. But there's an emotional impact to this standardization that can't be ignored. When a soldier donned Roman gear, he wasn't just preparing for war. He was connecting to a tradition, to a history, to a structure that existed before him and would continue after. And this generated an internal transformation. The individual ceased to be just a body in combat and became part of a larger machine. A machine that carried the weight of the empire, the strength of discipline, the authority of order. This transformation shaped decisions. It shaped attitudes. It shaped how soldiers saw themselves and how they were seen. Because standardization didn't erase individuality, it channeled it. It directed it. It converted personal effort into collective strength, and that's what made Rome so difficult to defeat. It wasn't just the number of men, it was the quality of the structure, the clarity of the strategy, the depth of the mentality. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because understanding how the psychological impact of uniform appearance influenced soldiers' morale and the perception of their enemies can reveal a lot about the behind-the-scenes nature of war, the silent decisions that sustained Roman rule, and the symbolic power of repetition as a tool of authority. Comment here. I'm on this journey too. If this part made you see that Roman standardization wasn't just logistical, it was a way of transforming soldiers into living symbols of discipline and power. The psychological impact of the Roman look was as powerful as their weapons. Rome understood that war didn't begin with the first blow. It began with the look, in the way the enemy saw the approaching legion, and this image wasn't constructed by chance. It was the result of precise decisions, thought out behind the scenes, that transformed each soldier into a living symbol of strength, order, and dominance. The uniform, the aligned shields, the gleaming helmets, the synchronized march, all of this created a presence that spoke before the sword. And what it said was simple: you are about to face something greater than yourself. This visual construction wasn't just aesthetic, it was strategic, because fear, when well positioned, is a silent weapon. It weakens confidence, destabilizes logic, and breaks down resistance. And Rome knew this. It knew that by presenting a legion with an impeccable appearance, with standardized equipment and a firm posture, it was already winning part of the battle. The enemy didn't see men, they saw a living wall, a collective entity advancing with precision and without hesitation. And this image generated impact, it generated tension, it generated errors. Behind the scenes of the campaigns, there are reports of adversaries who hesitated to attack upon seeing the Roman formation, not for lack of courage, but instinct. Because the legion's appearance activated something profound, a perception that the army would not break, would not retreat, would not become disorganized. It was as if the appearance itself were a declaration of invulnerability, and this affected decisions. It affected strategies, it affected emotions, because when the enemy already feels defeated before the fight begins, Rome is already one step ahead. But this impact wasn't just external, it also shaped the soldiers themselves, wearing the Roman uniform, carrying the shield, lining up in formation. All of this created an internal transformation. The soldier saw himself as part of something greater. He felt the weight of responsibility, but also the strength of the structure. And this reinforced his discipline, his confidence, his dedication. It was as if the visual aspect not only intimidated others, but strengthened himself. And this duality is what made the Roman army so effective. Because it didn't just fight, it presented itself. And this presentation was part of the strategy. There's a hidden truth in this type of construction. Rome understood that war was also a narrative, and that visuals were the first chapter. Every detail, from the helmet crest to the position of the shields, told a story of order, of power, of dominance. And this story was read by everyone on the battlefield, by the allies, who felt protected, by the enemies who felt threatened, and by the soldiers themselves, who felt part of a greater journey, a journey that depended not only on physical strength, but on the image that sustained that strength. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because understanding how banners, insignia, and visual symbols reinforced this collective narrative can reveal a lot about the emotional underpinnings of the war, and how Rome used imagery as a tool of leadership, belonging, and lasting impact. Comment here. That makes sense to me. If this part made you realize that the Roman look wasn't just about appearance, it was a silent strategy that began long before the battle. When we compare the Roman army with other armies of the same era, the contrast is immediate and revealing. The Gauls, for example, had fierce warriors, known for their brute strength and courage in combat, but their equipment was often improvised, varied, and lacking in standardization. Each warrior brought what he could, what he inherited, what he could forge. This created a chaotic aesthetic, a visual presence that conveyed aggression, but not necessarily cohesion. The Carthaginians, Rome's direct rivals in the Punic Wars, had a more organized military structure, influenced by diverse cultures, including the Phoenicians and the Greeks. Their soldiers used long spears, round shields, and more ornate armor, but still lacked something that Rome mastered: strategic standardization. The Roman difference wasn't just in the quality of their equipment, it was in the logic behind it. While the Gauls relied on individual strength and the eye, Carthaginians on tactical diversity, Rome relied on uniformity as a means of control. And that made all the difference, because when an army presents itself with the same armor, the same shield, the same Gladius, it doesn't just convey discipline, it commands respect. The enemy doesn't see isolated soldiers, they see a structure, a machine that moves with precision, acts with intention, and resists with constancy. This difference became even more evident on the battlefield. The Gauls, however, brave, often launched into combat in disarray, relying on strength and speed. The Romans, on the other hand, advanced in formation, protected by the scutum, guided by clear commands, sustained by a collective logic. And this had a profound psychological impact, because chaos, however intense, dissolves in the face of order. And Rome knew this. It knew that war wasn't just about strength, it was about control, it was about decision, it was about mindset. The Carthaginians, led by Hannibal, came close to breaking this logic. With bold strategies such as crossing the Alps with war elephants, they surprised Rome and caused profound damage. But even so, the Roman structure rebuilt, because its strength lay not only in reaction, it lay in the ability to reorganize, to adapt, to maintain cohesion even under pressure. And this ability stemmed from the equipment, yes, but also from the way it was designed, distributed, and used. It was a war engineering that began long before the combat. There's a hidden truth in this kind of comparison. While other armies relied on individuality, Rome relied on collectivity. And this shaped everything, from training to how soldiers viewed themselves. A Gallic warrior could be a lone hero. A Roman soldier was part of a larger story. And this difference in mindset was reflected in the outcome, because war, in the end, isn't just about who hits the hardest, it's about who holds the structure together the longest. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because understanding how visual symbols, such as banners, insignia, and colors, reinforced this collective identity and created an emotional narrative within the legions, can reveal a lot about the behind-the-scenes nature of loyalty, leadership, and the symbolic construction of Roman power. Comment here. That makes sense to me. If this part made you see that the true difference in Rome wasn't just in its weapons, it was in the way they connected to the mindset and structure of the empire. Now that you know the ins and outs of Roman equipment, you might have realized that each piece, from Gladius to shield, from armor to helmet, wasn't just a combat tool. It was an extension of the mindset that sustained the empire. Rome didn't build soldiers just to fight. It molded them to perform, to carry a narrative, to become living symbols of discipline, strategy, and belonging. And this completely changes the way we view war, because the true impact wasn't just on the battlefield. It was in how Rome chose to present itself to the world. What's most striking is that this logic wasn't limited to practical function. It permeated emotional, symbolic, and even psychological layers. The Roman look was designed to instill fear, yes, but also to inspire respect, to emotionally destabilize adversaries and, at the same time, bolster the morale of the soldiers themselves. It was a construction of silent authority that began long before the first blow, and this reveals a hidden truth about power. It doesn't depend solely on strength. It depends on the image that sustains that strength. Throughout this journey, we saw how the Gladius taught precision, how the shield supported the formation, how armor shaped posture, and how the helmet communicated hierarchy. And when all this came together, the result was a legion that didn't just fight. It asserted itself. It advanced with presence. It left its mark not only on the territory, but also on the memories of the people it faced. And this is what makes the study of Roman equipment so fascinating, because it doesn't just speak of war, it speaks of decisions, behind-the-scenes details, of choices that reveal the essence of an empire. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because understanding how banners, insignia, and visual symbols reinforced this collective identity can reveal a lot about the emotional impact of war and how Rome used imagery as a tool of leadership, cohesion, and legacy. Comment here, I'm on this journey too. If this part made you see that Roman equipment wasn't just technique, it was a silent language that sustained the power of an entire empire. If you've made it this far, you've already realized that Roman equipment wasn't just about iron and leather. It was about mindset, strategy, and belonging. Each piece told a story. Every detail revealed decisions that shaped the empire. And if this content helped you see war from a different perspective, leave a like. This shows that this exchange is meaningful to you and helps keep this journey we're building together alive. Write in the comments, I'm with you until the end. It's a simple way to show that you were present down to the last detail, and also to inspire those who are just arriving to dive into this universe with us. And if you want to continue exploring the behind-the-scenes story of Roman warriors, the symbols that shaped the empire, and the details that official history doesn't always highlight, subscribe to the channel here. That way you can stay up to date on future videos and join me on this journey through stories that still resonate, even after 2,000 years. There's a video here that complements this subject. Click and continue with me there. The journey still has a lot to reveal.